In the year 2000, along the flooded banks of South Africa's Blyde River, a tiny, orphaned creature was found, barely clinging to life. It was a 2-week-old female hippopotamus, alone and fading, a victim of the same devastating floods that had reshaped the landscape. No mother could be found, and in the wild, this meant a sentence of certain, swift death. But a pair of human hands reached out, those of Tony and Shirley Joubert, a gesture of compassion that would forge a bond no one could have predicted. They named her Jessica. We investigate the profound loyalty a Wildheart can show to its chosen family. If you're already enjoying this story, a quick like and share makes all the difference. Let us know in the comments where you're listening from today. The Jouberts lived a simple life on the banks of the Blyde River, a waterway famous not for its tranquility, but for its powerful, unpredictable wildlife. They were accustomed to the presence of crocodiles, elephants, and of course, the hippos, animals known in Africa as being among the most dangerous on the continent. To take in a tiny 2-week-old hippo calf was not an act of simple pet ownership. It was a profound, life-altering commitment to a creature that, by its very nature, was programmed for hostility and immense size. Jessica arrived weighing a mere 35 pounds, small enough to be carried, but with an inherited instinct that already pulsed beneath her gray skin. She was malnourished and cold. Tony and Shirley instantly became her lifeline. Their small home, typically a quiet sanctuary for 2 people, suddenly transformed into an intensive care unit for a baby herbivore that would eventually grow to weigh well over a ton. The first few weeks were a sleepless haze of worry and commitment. Hippos need warmth and they need milk, lots of it. Tony, a former game warden, knew the challenges, but his heart had overridden his professional training. Jessica initially slept on a blanket beside their bed, a tiny, snuffling presence that required constant attention. The initial diet was a desperate combination of cow's milk and other nutritional supplements, blended by hand until they found a formula that worked. They had to teach her to drink from a bottle, mimicking the natural action of nursing. This wasn't just feeding, it was the foundation of trust being poured, drop by slow drop, into the relationship. They made a conscious choice. They would not domesticate her. They would simply give her a safe harbor. The river was her birthright, and they wanted her to retain her connection to it. But for now, their house was her dam, their bed her riverbank, and their love the only thing standing between this fragile hippo and oblivion. This choice to save her life while respecting her wild nature was the central paradox of their journey. The early days of smallness were fleeting. Jessica, by nature, was an accelerating force of biology. She grew with astonishing speed, fueled by her unique milk formula. Her appetite matching the scale of her species. She outgrew the initial blanket by the bed. She outgrew the dedicated corner of the living room. Tony and Shirley quickly realized that a hippo cannot be kept indefinitely indoors. The move was made to a specially designed outdoor area, but her size was now becoming undeniable. Within a year, she weighed hundreds of pounds, and her affectionate nudges, once endearing, became powerful shoves. There was a moment, perhaps when her immense jaw, capable of snapping a canoe in half, yawned open in a lazy greeting, when the Jouberts truly understood that the wild they had brought in was no longer a fragile calf. It was a massive, potent animal that required a different kind of respect. The dynamics of their home were irreversibly changed, shifting from a rescue operation to a daily negotiation with nature itself. The next few years became an unprecedented study in interspecies communication. Since Jessica had no hippo role models, she began to adopt the social cues of her human family. She didn't learn the language of the river pod. She learned the subtle rhythms of Tony and Shirley's lives. She still maintained her connection to the Blyde River, spending her days in the cool, deep water, But every evening, she returned to the house, drawn by a loyalty that defied the biological imperative to migrate or join a wild group. This nightly return became a ritual, a profound reaffirmation of her choice. Tony and Shirley never locked her out. They never forced her presence. It was always a willing, voluntary act of connection. She would often come right up to the front door, waiting patiently for them to open it, sometimes even nudging it with her huge snout. Once inside, her behavior was almost impossibly gentle. She navigated the narrow hallways and small rooms with the careful, deliberate grace of a creature who understood the fragility of her surroundings. She would rest her chin on the sofa, watching television with the couple, a massive, silent spectator to the small dramas of human life. Her favorite spot became the foot of Tony and Shirley's bed, where she would settle down for the night, a 1,500-pound guardian breathing softly in the shadows. It was in these quiet, intimate moments that the true bond crystallized. They learned to read her subtle vocalizations, the soft, contented snuffles, the low, deep groans that meant she was happy. They learned her body language, a flick of the ears, a slow blink of her ancient eyes, the way she would lean her weight against Tony's leg as an expression of pure, unreserved trust. This trust was not based on dominance or training. It was built on mutual respect and shared existence. They knew she could exert her will instantly, but she simply chose not to. She chose to be part of their domestic calm. She chose the safety and the love of this small human pod over the chaotic, dangerous freedom of the wild. The world outside, however, refused to see her as anything but a wild animal. Visitors and researchers struggled to reconcile the image of the deadly territorial hippopotamus with this gentle, oversized housemate who accepted a mug of rooibos tea, her favorite treat, from a human hand. But for Tony and Shirley, the paradox had dissolved. She was simply their daughter, a creature of the river with a human heart. They had bridged the vast primal gap between species with nothing but consistency, kindness, and unwavering acceptance. This was the environment where Jessica didn't just survive. She thrived, and where her instinct for belonging would soon be tested against her formidable instinct for defense. The sanctuary Tony and Shirley had created was idyllic, but it was not impenetrable. It bordered a wild river, and the dangers of that world occasionally encroached upon their domestic sphere. It was during these moments of intrusion that the Jouberts witnessed the profound, instinct-defying depth of Jessica's loyalty. She was not just a housemate. She was a guardian with teeth and tonnage to back up her devotion. One evening, a rogue leopard, drawn by the scent of domesticity or simply passing through, ventured too close to the house. Leopards are masters of silence, but Jessica's senses, tuned to the subtle changes in the river's rhythm, were superior. She had been resting by the front door, a deep, contented rumble vibrating in her chest. Then the calm shattered. A sudden, massive roar erupted, a sound Tony described as something primal, terrifyingly loud, and wholly unexpected. It was not the gentle snuffling of their daughter. It was the territorial rage of a dominant hippo. Tony rushed to the window and saw the blurred flash of a big cat retreating at impossible speed, driven back by a creature 10 times its weight, and with a ferocity that negated the need for speed. In that instant, Tony realized that Jessica did not see him as a master or even an ally. She saw him as family, and their home as her territory, which she was genetically equipped to defend. Her protective instincts, usually reserved for her own offspring in the wild, had been completely redirected toward these two small, soft humans. There were other, quieter moments that underlined this commitment. When strangers or unfamiliar workers came onto the property, Jessica would position herself deliberately between them and Tony or Shirley. She wouldn't charge, but she would stand, silent and immovable, her ears angled and her body language communicating an absolute refusal to let them pass. The tension in the air was palpable, a silent standoff between human apprehension and hippo conviction. Perhaps the most significant challenge came during a drought. As the river level dropped, territorial conflicts increased among the wild hippos. One massive bull, driven by aggression and the need for space, wandered onto the Joubert's stretch of the bank, asserting dominance. The bull, twice Jessica's size, posed a true threat not only to her, but potentially to the people in the vicinity. Jessica, however, never hesitated. She emerged from the water, not with a playful splash, but with a focused, deliberate charge that signaled war. The confrontation was deafening, a thunderous clash of immense bodies and a terrifying display of raw, wild power. She drove the intruder back into the deeper channel, establishing the boundaries not of the river, but of the Joubert's immediate territory. She returned to the house that evening, exhausted but triumphant, needing nothing more than a few reassuring words and the warmth of her blanket. The incident solidified their understanding. Jessica's enormous strength was tethered by her love for them, a fierce, unbreakable contract of mutual guardianship. The years passed, and Jessica became a magnificent fixture of the Blyde River community, a contradiction of nature existing in perfect harmony. Her life was a testament not to the taming of a wild animal, but to the acceptance of a profound cross-species love. She never lost her wildness. She still swam the deeper currents, communicated with her own kind, and possessed the power of a force of nature. Yet her heart belonged to the porch of a modest riverside home. She represents the absolute highest potential of connection, a bond forged not through forced domestication, but through a constant mutual choice. Every time she returned from the river, she made the decision again, to be the river daughter, the house hippo, the guardian. Tony and Shirley, in turn, dedicated their lives to honoring that choice. They learned to share their simple meals with her, to scratch the rough skin behind her ears just right, and to live with the quiet certainty that a wild, powerful heart was beating for them alone. Their domestic life was a series of gentle negotiations with a 1,000-pound being who wanted nothing more than to be close. Think of the sheer magnitude of the trust. A hippo, the most territorial of beasts, allows two small humans to rub her gums and clean her enormous teeth. A wild animal, whose instinct is to fear and flee human encroachment, chooses to lay her head on a human lap. This is the essence of the cinematic sanctuary. Not control, but connection. It is the moment where fear vanishes, and the only remaining force is the quiet, overwhelming simplicity of loyalty. This isn't just a story of rescue. It is a permanent, beautiful redefinition of what family truly means. Jessica's story is a profound, living rebuttal to the conventional wisdom that suggests nature's laws are always rigid and unforgiving. It teaches us that trauma and displacement, met with consistent, unconditional kindness, can rewrite the fundamental script of instinct. She is a massive, walking, swimming paradox, a testament to the healing power of belonging. For Tony and Shirley, she never left the river, but she never truly left their side either. Their home remains a unique, open-door sanctuary, a place where a dangerous, powerful wild heart can find perfect rest. Their courage was not in raising her, but in allowing her to choose them, day after day, year after year. We often look to the animal kingdom for lessons in survival and instinct, but Jessica offers something far more tender, a masterclass in loyalty, devotion, and the fluid definition of family. Her life forces us to question the hard lines we draw between species, between the wild and the domestic, between love and fear. She shows us that empathy is not a uniquely human trait, but a universal force that can bridge any divide, no matter how vast. The river daughter, saved by human compassion, ultimately became the protector of that compassion, affirming that the greatest sanctuaries are not built of brick and mortar, but of mutual, unwavering trust. The true resonance of Jessica's tale echoes long after the sun sets over the Blyde River. It is a quiet reminder that the most powerful forces in the world are often the gentlest. The willingness to nurture, the courage to trust, and the profound, silent language of one Wildheart that chose to stay. Her legacy is one of boundless loyalty. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story moved you, please consider liking and subscribing. It truly helps us bring more stories like this to light. We have a question for you. What was the single moment in this story that resonated with you the most? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one,